Concerns about the men were not confined solely to the families. Carol Brown worked as a radio operator for Tim Wallace in Te Anau, and for many years was the first point of contact for the shooting teams and their families when things went wrong.
They were pretty scary times in a way. They just didn't even want to think about it. In fact, I think most of them were like that. And some of them used to say to me, Carol, if anything's happened, I want to know straight away. And others would say to me, no, I don't want to know. So, you know, I had that sort of pressure on me of who I should tell what and who I shouldn't tell. And sometimes there was one particular accident, I remember, that this partner or wife, I think it was, hadn't been told, but she knew that something had happened. By the time the police got round to her place in the morning, she had locked herself inside and it was so absolutely beside herself she just didn't want to see anybody. And yeah, it was pretty tricky.
I heard on the radio that one of the choppers had gone down and Evan had been picked up. The chopper had come up the valley and picked him up that morning, and they were heading to Queenstown to shoot. And the chopper that had come down was in Queenstown. It had hit wires, and right away I thought it was Evan. I thought, you know, this is it, and we didn't really know what happened. We knew it had to be something quite bad because there'd been other choppers, accidents, and nothing had been said about it.
Incredibly, Evan had swapped helicopters that morning after he left Anne and was safe. But not everyone was so lucky.
One of the worst things I remember was if the guys forgot to call you when they came back in at night and after dark, and you know, you're sort of starting to wonder what was going on, and but you wouldn't want to ring the wives or the girlfriends in case they got worried, and there was no need to worry. So there was quite a few occasions that I just used to drive out to the airport with the fingers and toes crossed thinking, I hope that helicopter's there when I get there, and of course there were occasions when it wasn't.
You know how people say that they have a feeling that something's going to happen? They wake up and they feel as though they've got a premonition. I never had those, never.
I didn't get a radio call, and he'd always said, give me an hour until after dark before you start to worry. I just thought that, you know, that the radio had failed, or just any number of things. You can find lots of excuses for why he hasn't called in.
I stayed up the whole night waiting and waiting.
I just contacted Bill at first light and said that he hadn't come back. They went and started searching, and even when one of the search machines landed at the farm, the GP got out, but he was a friend of mine, and he walked over and I said, oh, so where are they? And it's even to that point where the search machine had come and landed at the farm, I still was totally expecting them to come. I was baking cakes, I was doing all sorts.
At 6 o'clock in the morning, the police rang and said it's going to go on the news, so you'll have to let someone know. You'll have to let your family know. So that's when I rang the girls in Christchurch and said to come out.
Lynn was left with 4 children to raise at the time of her husband Alan Bond's death, and Barbara was pregnant with her first.
The helicopter guys seemed to have a routine that when an accident happened, they all gathered at the house and sort of talked over old times, had a few drinks. And it seemed to be just a tradition that they carried out. So it's probably sad that it had happened often enough for it to be an almost set process that they went through after an accident.
Went to plenty of funerals. That was just part of the job, you know. No one really worried about it. If you got killed, it was hard luck, mate, and your turn's come. It was different. They were different to any other funeral you went to.
It's the only time we all used to talk to each other was at a funeral. You know, you'd knock off and some, you know, sometimes there was funerals on of blokes, and you couldn't, you know, might be 2 funerals in one day.
Colin and I discussed this because we were real good, he's my best friend. We discussed it, oh, if something ever happened to one of us, he said, it'll just about put you off helicopters the rest of your life, wouldn't it? I said, yeah, it would. But when he was killed, which he was, they didn't. In fact, the day he was killed, I carried on flying on helicopters. I did. The same day, I was actually still flying a helicopter. When I heard of the news, I was still flying on a helicopter. I went out the game that day. I think at the time you had to. I couldn't see the point, but not, you're pissed off, and you're going to get drunk at a funeral in a couple of days, and you're going to be the pallbearer. But you just carried on flying helicopters.
It affected everybody. Because, they were a very tight, and they still are, a very tight bunch. And so, when someone was killed, it just hit everybody.
Deaths or not, aerial operations continued unabated. But with the big herds gone and the teams now highly efficient, the inevitable happened, and the end of the good times was in sight.